so much for your time.
Perfect. Perfect.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm very honored to be part of your live session today.
Sven, we started 5 weeks ago and we had no idea how this works out. It was just an idea, and we start to love it more from day to day. And like yesterday, we had Severin Lüthi. Today with you, I have to say, I'm very well prepared, and it was a long preparation.
Oh, really?
Many things. Sven, you speak fluently German, but we decided to go in English for all our followers.
That's better.
The first question I have, you were in singles and doubles. You were around 800 in the rankings. You loved the game, but what was missing for your personal career?
I think because I didn't get the right guidance, and because of that, I think that's why it motivates me to be a coach, actually. It was in a time that I think the availability to really go pro was very tough. I mean, the road was tough. I mean, we played not the futures. We had the satellites, the four tournaments, and I mean, I enjoyed it, but it also cost a lot of money. And then we didn't make a lot of money, so I started playing tournaments in France, and I got a ranking there, and actually was quite fun. And then I was enjoying myself a little bit too much, but I did finish my university. I went to the University of Kansas and Southwest Baptist University in America. I played college tennis for 3 years. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it 4. Just the circumstances. I never really intended to become a coach. I just had a passion for tennis, and that led me to a place that I could make a decision to go overseas and start coaching.
I mentioned it already, like before you were online here. It sounds like a hall of fame of tennis, that the players you coach, I just go through the names: Arantxa Sanchez Vicario, Mary Pierce, Greg Rusetsky, Michael Stich. In Germany, Nicolas Kiefer, Tommy Haas, Maria Sharapova, and for sure I missed many good players now. Sloane Stephens, obviously. What was the first, your first coaching job on tour? How did that start?
Yeah, I mean, listen, so I wanted to travel. I finished my university, and I wanted to travel, and my parents led me to this. My mom, especially, she led me to this little advertisement in a tennis magazine, an American tennis magazine. And it was an advertisement for a job in Japan to coach at a tennis school. And the tennis school was called the American Tennis School. And the American Tennis School had about 25,000 students, and they wanted to set up a junior program. So I applied, and as it turned out, the person who was in charge of going through the resumes and the selection procedure, his name is Tex Swain, and he is the brother of Gary Swain. Gary Swain is an agent for IMG, and who is still at this time, also at the time before, in 91. This was in 91. He was representing John McEnroe. And so I was there just teaching, from different location to different location. I went from Suzuki to Kawasaki. I went to Yokohama to Tokyo. I went from all the places, but then Tex said, "Hey, listen, I got a good gig for you. 1 week you can hit with Monica for 1 week, and we just have a good time. We just take a week off and we go and take care of her." I said, "Okay, that's cool." And basically that started off quite a bit of interest also in Japan from the professional players. And I started, after I worked for Monica for 1 week, all of a sudden I was getting all these requests, and I was working with Naoko Sawamatsu. And she was ranked around 30, 35 in the world. And her uncle had a tennis academy in Tokyo. So they offered me a position. And I said, okay, that's cool. I can work 6 months out of the year on the tour, and 6 months I can work at the academy. And a week or so later, Monica called, or reached out again and said, hey, can Sven not finish the year with me and come to 3 tournaments and 1 training week? Is he available? And I said, well, I would love to, you know. I didn't sign the contract yet. I didn't have, like, my time was available. And so I made that suggestion, and the uncle of Naoko Sawamatsu said, no, you're not allowed to go. And I said, well, can we negotiate? Can we, you know, speak about this? This would be good experience. I can help Naoko when I come back in December, no problem. We can start a preseason. And he said, no, you're not going. And so I gave up a huge job that I was offered in Japan in '91 just to go for 4 weeks with Monica, because I said, I don't want to work for somebody that is kind of limiting me in a sense. And so I said, thank you very much for all you have done, but I'm going 4 weeks with Monica. And that was the beginning, basically. I was on the tour. She won all the tournaments, and then I was basically inside, you know. But at that stage in '91, there were not many coaches on tour. I started as a sparring partner, and obviously I was able to copy. At that time, I was like 27, so I could copy, you know, Stephanie Graf. I could do Sabatini, all the one-handers, you know, all the one-handers.
So you were like, you were the perfect hitting partner because you were able to copy the players.
I basically, you know, I could copy exactly like they did. The only thing is I was not willing to put on a skirt. But other than that, I looked pretty good, you know.
Okay. So this is basically like how you started. Who had the biggest influence on you, like before you became a coach? Was it a college coach? Was it maybe your parents? Like all the attributes you needed as a coach, like who helped you grow into that?
You know, I mean, there are so many people that influences us, you know, in life. And I think that continues to be the case. I do want to give credit to my parents. I do want to give credit to the coaches that gave me all the problems in the world to challenge me. And, you know, there was a coach in Holland. There were 2 coaches in Holland that really stood out for me. His name was Bonnie Hafran. He was living in Holland, but he was from Czech and played ice hockey. And Stanley Franker, who was at that time in Amsterdam, he was the lead of the tennis district, and then he became the big boss for the national federation. But Stanley really helped me in that beginning, that first initial part of my career.
When you made the difficult decision and like going for Monica Seles instead of the secure job in Japan, basically from that point you never looked back. It was Monica, and then like what was the next step? Like today when I did the preparations, when I was like, I knew you're great, and like I admired you a lot, and I was mirroring you much more than you know. But I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like, so what was next?
Well, you know, I scouted. You know, I was working with Monica, and then there was one incident at a tournament in Barcelona, and I'm quite a social person, and I was talking to a Dutch guy who happened to be the husband of Nicole Jagerman. She was about to play Monica. And at that time, Johan Cruyff was still in Barcelona. And so he went, you know, he went to see Barcelona. He went, you know, so we're just catching up as Dutchies about the soccer. And we had a good conversation. And then the father absolutely, you know, got so angry with me that I spoke to him. And I couldn't even explain myself. And then all of a sudden, Monica stepped up and kind of protected me and said, hey, listen, you know, he's just, you know, talking to a friend, and, you know, yeah, but he shouldn't do this. And so that was the first break in the relationship. And then they said, oh, you know, for the French Open, we're going to work with somebody else, but then on grass, we're going to work with you again. Yeah. And so I called Stanley Franker, and I said, Stanley, what would you do? He goes, stop right away. Just send them a nice letter, thank them, and just move on. This is not how it's done. Stand for what you believe in. And so I said, okay, I'll do that. And so before I know it, I was on the, I was basically without a job. But obviously, when you're on the road, you get to know people and you start scouting. So I started in '92 with Mary Pierce. And for just a very short time, actually, just for like 2 months, because her father made it basically impossible for me to do the job. And so we had a little bit of a run-in, and that didn't last very long. And then I got a chance to actually go back to see a friend of mine in Orlando. His name is Bobby Blair. He had an academy. I got introduced to Mark McCormick, who obviously the legend of sports marketing, and so it's just a network. And a good friend of mine always said to me, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so I said, okay, this guy is going to be able to either help me or basically cut me off. And then I started working with Kimiko Date. I went back to Japan.
Okay.
And this was in December '92.
It kind of always brings you back to Japan. So this is like you love this country.
I love Japan. That's where my roots are as a pro, as a pro coach. But and then working with Kimiko. But it's funny. I just found a contract still of her and I, and we're still in contact. I saw her in December this year, and I said to her, "What happened? Why?" She goes, "Listen, I was so scared because every day I got to the court, I didn't know how to speak English, and I didn't know what to say to you. And we had a translator with us, traveling with us, and we went to Australia, and she basically panicked. I mean, she couldn't follow me, and we just said, okay."
But she was not able to share it with you at this time. She was like,
no, she could. Yeah, she was embarrassed, and she was still young, and now we laugh about it, and we have a good laugh, and I say, yeah, those days. And I also said, listen, I was also, very young, inexperienced in a sense, and I maybe overcoached. Maybe I gave her too much information, and most likely that was the case. And so, that ended, and so I ended up going for like 6 months with Mark McCormick and Betsy Nagelson. I was on the road with them in '93. And in '93, I got a request around, this must have been like on the clay court season, to ask me to work with Arantxa Sanchez Vicario. So, it was like I go from one player to the other, and it just kind of, I wanted to stay longer. It just, I actually, with Arantxa, I must admit, and I told her in Cincinnati just last year, I told her, I said, I made a huge mistake because we had a very strong conversation in '94 during the Lipton, and she was not performing. And I said to her, listen, Arantxa, you can do so much better, but you must take responsibility. You must take ownership. You must follow a path. You must get a physical trainer. You must And I told the team, I said, I give you guys 3 weeks, and after that, I'll decide. And to be honest, she did everything I asked for. She won the World Championships in doubles with Novotná in Saddlebrook. She won a tournament in Emilia Island. She beat Navratilova. And she even, she said to me after the tournament, even I hope my coach stays with me. But there was also something private, and I don't want to share here, but there was something that I was blamed for. And that just set wrong with me. And I said, Arantxa, you have proven to me that you can do so much better, and that you should be winning slams, and you should be, because this is the path you need to take. But for now, at this moment, I'm stopping. And this was in, like just after the Lipton at that time.
In general, when you start the collaboration, Sven, what is the most important thing? Like how much of your philosophy you try to get in, and how much is like the individual part, because every player obviously is different?
Yeah. For me, I need to get to know the player, you know, and I say always, I need to get to know the person before I get to know the player. And so, you know, it takes me some time to get to that stage. And then I, you know, obviously gain trust. I want to gain trust.
Yeah.
And how do you gain trust is by showing, first of all, a lot of interest into the person, but also do your homework and go in and do your research and do your due diligence and make sure that you know everybody within the team and what their structure is and what their responsibilities are. And over time, you see what the player needs. I always go to, there's a human need in everybody. And there are 6 human needs. I won't go into it, but yeah. I find what the player needs. And if I find that the player needs, and that's what I will address. And so that is my philosophy. And this may be a stronger forehand or a better backhand, or it may also be an attitude, or it may be a routine, it may be physical, it may be nutritional. I will pick 1 or 2 things where I feel it's a strength, and what do you need to do in order to be the best.
Sven, you seem to be always very good in figuring out when it's the right time also to determine a relationship. You know, like when you had the feeling like you cannot help that 100% anymore. Is there one relationship to a player, looking back, you thought like it kind of stopped too early, from which side ever?
Yeah, with Arantxa, I
okay.
made the mistake. I made that mistake. I definitely made a mistake with Arantxa. But with all the other ones, you know, I think, you know, it's so close. You're so connected with the player, and then obviously there's a fine line that you, and I treat it as a job. And yeah. Sometimes the player thinks that we're more like friends in a sense, you know, you become a confidant, you become someone they trust. And that's also what I try to gain as a coach. But there's always a fine line. I'm in a job, I'm doing a job, you're paying me, and I will always keep it very professional. And so there's always a certain distance, so that when they cross a certain line that may have to do with respect, or may have to do with understanding your own needs as a coach. Yeah. If that is not met, then you have to say, thank you very much. You have one career as a player, maximize it. If I cannot help you, get rid of me, or I step out.
And you are one of the few coaches, to be honest, who was very successful in women's tennis and in men's tennis. At this point of your career, you had all this experience already as a women's coach. When did you transfer into a men's coach? What was your first player?
Michael Stieg.
Michael Stieg, that's a good start.
Yeah, that's a good start. Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a funny story. So yeah. Michael decides that he's coming to the Bollettieri Academy at that stage. And this was in '95. Yeah. Nick Bollettieri was working with Boris Becker. So at that time, it was already IMG owned. So Nick and I were working together also with Mary Pierce. But Mary Pierce was going to the Fed Cup, and I had a week off. So Nick says to me, hey, listen, Michael is coming to the academy. I'm working with Boris. Huge conflict. I cannot help him, but I've told Michael that he can come and somebody will take care of him. Sven, can you take care of Michael? I said, of course, it'd be my pleasure. It will be my honor. So Michael comes to the academy. I pick him up at the airport, and he goes to me. He goes, Sven, I don't know. You know, I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. I need to change something. And we have an open conversation, and he says to me, Sven, this week, you're the boss. You tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I said, okay, cool, no problem. It sounds good. And I said, okay, I'll pick you up.
What is your first feeling if somebody says it? You feel also a little bit pressure because it's a lot of like responsibility, or you think like, no, that's the best I can have as a coach?
It's the best you can have, but it does come with responsibility, and it puts you on the spot. But I love that. I love to be challenged. Mm-hmm. Without a challenge, I mean, why even do a job? Yeah. So he said that, and obviously the guy is, Wimbledon champion, former number 2 in the world. He's a little bit younger than I am, but at that stage, it was '95. I was, 30, And here he is, you know, and I'm like, dude, man, you're a fucking legend. Excuse my language. He's a legend,
No,
you know. So
we
he
had
says to
Marat
me,
Safin in the show, so don't worry about your
oh,
language.
okay. So he says to me, you know, you the boss. So I said, okay, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And he goes, Sven, I don't start before 10. And I said, Michael, what kind of bullshit are you telling me that I'm the one who's going to be dictating what to do? You just told me on the way from Tampa to Bradenton, you tell me all about how you struggle and how you want me to take the lead. And now you tell me you don't start before 10. I said, I can tell you what your problem is already. And he goes, all right, pick me up at 9. And that's how, yeah.
And then you probably did not practice on center court in Bradenton because Boris was there, so you had to pick another court.
No, Boris was not there. It was just that Nick couldn't work with Michael. So I made an assessment and we did a lot of talking, and obviously physically he needed to do a lot of work. He needed to get a lot fitter. I switched back to his old serve. He had changed his serve, and I asked him why did you even bother, because I thought his serve was his weapon. Yeah. And so we got him back to serving like he did. I said, because it was, and as you know, he had a unique type of serve, but he got so quickly to the net. Yeah. The transition was so quick, and he changed that. He was every time one step short. So we went back, and I said, okay, you need to go back to your own serve because you're losing one step. And he did. And then actually the week later, he played in Los Angeles, and he won a tournament. And so he said, well, Sven, if you ever come available, give me a call. I want to work with you. And so a couple months later, maybe not a couple months.
But you worked on his forehand as well, right?
We changed his forehand, but that was mainly due to the fact that he won Antwerp, and he stepped up the plane, and we were going to Milan. And he had just had that huge ankle surgery or injury that he's had. He came back. We trained him in Bradenton for a long time. He got, he won Antwerp. So he steps off the plane in Milan and he twists his ankle back. Had to take a bone spur out. So he had another break. And so I said, okay, what is the one thing that you want to improve? And he told me, I said, I want to get a better forehand. I want to be able to hit a forehand down the line. And so I said to him, okay, all right. And so when a player says that, as a coach, you're like, all right, thanks. Okay, let's talk about this. And so we just changed his biomechanics. He used to lead his forehand with his elbow going back first. Yeah. And then and so always back. He had no rotation basically. There was no shoulder rotation. The shoulder rotation because he took his elbow back. And so I changed the elbow back to shoulder rotation. And basically because his core strength overall, his physical was getting so much better that he was able to translate it so quickly. I mean, the guy is phenomenally talented. So he was able to, and it clicked quite quickly. And he said, I got it. And he did. And he, from there on, he actually, had all of a sudden he had a weapon on his forehand.
Greg Rusetsky, I read it. You were even his best man on the wedding. Yeah. Is that right? So you were coaching.
That's right.
But like you gained so much trust, obviously, and you got that close that at the end you ended up like being his best man.
Yeah. And we're still very close. This is the thing. We do get so close with our players. Yeah. And it's hard to, and some of the players don't have very close friends. And because they travel so much,
because
and they
the tour is very lonely, and like
yeah, and so we had and still to this day I had a great relationship. And he says, he asked me, he goes, I would like you to be my best man. And we went through quite a bit. He had some good results, and he really, we really hit it off as two people that got to know each other really well. And so it was fun.
He won the Compact Grand Slam Cup, I think, right? This was $1.2 million. This was enough of the trust he needed to
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, you know, and this is how Greg is a great guy, and this is the thing, you know, it was not part of my contract. So all the tournaments were covered.
No,
it was not in my contract.
Ah, this is okay.
So, and he kind of,
because it was kind of an exhibition tournament. You had like Slams and ATP.
And exactly.
And we're talking about some kind of percentage we usually have with the players. So okay.
Was not in it.
Did you ask for that, or what happened? Or did he offer it by himself?
No, I didn't ask. He just said, "Listen, I know it's not in our contract, but I'm going to give you your share." And that showed to me, you know, great respect, and you know, that's something that failed in other relationships. In you know, like Mary Pierce, there was a moment where we had some issues, and you know, when that happens, then you say, okay, this guy is for real. So it was really good.
You stopped working with Mary Pierce after she played finals Australian Open, but you
97.
don't want to share the story now, because maybe you're gonna write a book one day. Is that correct? And like,
listen, it's very simple. I won't go into much detail. Yeah, so that was my third time that I worked with her. So the third time, I've worked with her 4 times. So the third time, so we made an agreement. But I had all these rules, and I made an error. I didn't get it signed before we started. So it was just postponed and postponed and postponed. And so she got to the final, and I finally...
But you had no signed contract.
I had no signed contract. Yeah. But I had a verbal agreement, and McCormick saw it, Gavin Forbes saw it, everybody knew what and you know, they do their job. If a manager, even though your relationship is strong with the manager, it doesn't mean that they represent you. They don't. They represent the client, so they cannot look after you. They knew that I was in my right. And so she decided that, and I don't think it's her, it was more, and not at management, it was more from somebody else. And basically I said, if you do not agree to the contract that we agreed upon, and you do not put all these clauses in there, then I'm done. And so no, this is what we do, and this is not going to be part of the contract. And so I said, okay, I'm out of here.
Have you been at the point one day that you lost a little bit fun in coaching? Because like I have to say, I was blessed with all the players I coached so far. I mean, it was like Sabine Lisicki, you know, Mona Bartel, fantastic, Peter. So great relationships, great guys. So it was everything easy. But I sometimes hear from other coaches that it's not always that smoothly. Did you hit a point at one day where you thought like, fuck, this is like, sorry for my language, this gets like this, it's no fun?
One of the last players I coached, unfortunately, one of the greatest guys I've worked with, one of the most talented guys I've worked with, his name is Wu Yibing from China.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I mean, I did everything, and with the team and all the people around, we did everything we could, management. But there was one huge obstacle, and the mother had her own agenda, and poor guy couldn't really do anything, because he was not in a position of taking his own personal control over that. And I must say, I really, really regret to have been in that position, that I actually had to speak out and make a quote and saying, you know, that I hope he finds somebody that will, you know, agree with his mother, you know. So it was a little bit under the belt, a punch under the belt, but I needed to do it because it was so terrible that the poor guy was a total victim, and he was not able to get out of that situation. And I warned them, and I warned him. I said, if you continue the way you are, you will be injured. It will cost you dearly. And unfortunately, I was right. He had a surgery. He has not played since 2019 March. So now add this here. He won't probably play until 2021. And he might lose 2 years because of this whole situation.
So you wanted to protect him, but you had the feeling no chance with these surroundings to protect the player.
No, not if I wanted to keep my principles in place. And my principles in place is just you have certain principles of coaching, and not even that, of human decency. And I don't blame anybody. It's my mistakes that I also make. But if you don't get paid for the first 4 months and you have to wait for a long time, and then after they don't pay you the full amount that is owed to you, those are moments that you just say, and a management cannot do anything about it. Nothing.
But you were looking forward. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what you love, Sven, right? Like coaching.
Yes, because I want to help. I wanted to help this kid. The kid is phenomenal. Yeah. He's unbelievable. I love the guy, but I couldn't help him. So it was frustrating for me because I couldn't do anything about it, and that hurt me. And so that, yeah.
And how is your approach usually to tennis parents? I mean, there is very successful coaches like Günter Bresnik. He wrote in the book that there is coaches and there is parents, and that's why it's parents and not coaches. You know what I mean? So
of course. Listen. I started with Adidas. I mean, we created the Adidas Player Development Program, and so we were asked by Adidas to be consultants.
It was in 2006. I think it was you. And Max Merkel, and then at the end it was Darren Cahill, also Gil Reyes and Steffi and Andre. I think were kind of it was a great program.
Yeah, still, I think, you know what, to be honest, I think a program after this crisis is over would do miracles again, because a lot of players will get cut, the prize money will be down, the coaches' fees will be down. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that some of these initiatives would be possible. But yeah, I started in actually end of 2005, and by myself. They called me the tennis doctor. And before I knew it, in 2007, Mats Merkel came on board, because I had 4 or 5 players every time I went to a tournament. And Mats was just a massive help to me, because he all of a sudden was able to do all the hitting. He could do all the due diligence on scouting. He was the perfect, right-hand man for the job, and he did a phenomenal job. He really carried the first, years of the program, and that's why we were able to add some people. So, I think it was really a great team effort. I mean, Adidas, all the respect for them, because they created something that was needed in a sense, because they were investing in all these players. And a lot of times these players leave coaches, or coaches leave players, and they saw their investment being without a coach, and they said, hey, listen, we're going to have to do an interim coaching, and respect for their vision, and we had fun. It was a great, and so working with parents was a massive element of working with Caroline Wozniacki. I worked for over 5 years with her, and so I took a back seat, and I was in the back, and I was coaching Caroline, but I was also coaching Peter, and so this worked. It was a good team relationship, and I worked with parents because I feel that the players wouldn't be there without the parents in tennis. You know that.
Exactly.
And so you do have to include them.
Respect also the fact.
And it's like with Maria. Maria, I worked with for almost 5 years. There was almost, I spoke more to Yuri than to Maria almost.
Okay. So Yuri wanted to, but what was it? Was it more like Yuri was curious, or he wanted to tell you sometimes or give you a few hints what?
Listen, it's just, but it's hard for a parent that has invested so much of his time. Yeah. And then he's not there. She didn't want him to be there anymore, but he has such a vested interest. And so out of respect to him, I always reached out, and I also made sure that I get to hear what he had to say, and what I listened to him. And of course, I try to learn what he can give me. And so we had a great relationship. I mean, that was sometimes we had a couple of good fights, but I enjoy it because it kept me sharp. When you work with Maria Sharapova and you're not sharp, I tell you, you have no chance, because she is. I mean, she is.
No, she's a perfectionist, and she expects nothing else. She's very demanding, but I mean, she deserves to be like.
I lost you.
No, we still see you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, I lost.
But what I said is that obviously, like, if you see Maria working on the court, she can expect this kind of demanding, because like she is super professional. She gives 100%. Why would you give 80%?
That's right, and it was demanded. I mean, it was not like said to you, "Hey, listen, you have to give 100%." That was unspoken, because when a player gives that much effort and much commitment, and not only to me but the entire team, and how she was, towards the other people she worked with, and you saw the work she did for Nike or Head or anybody, for the media, anybody she worked for with Porsche, you could see a real professional athlete at work, and the dedication that he had was just phenomenal.
You were working with Maria when I came on tour as a brand new coach with Sabine Lisicki. And to be honest, I hadn't coached before. I stopped my career 2 weeks before, then I coached. So I was like watching a lot of you guys practice, because I wanted to see more like what you do. Obviously, I was scouting Maria too, and I saw this level of intensity you had. It made me almost a little bit scared, but it also like it challenged me, because like I thought, okay, this is the way you have to coach. Was Maria the highest level of intensity you had on the court of all the players you had?
There was one that was more intense than Maria.
Who was that?
Monica Seles.
Monica Seles.
And, I started with her. So, of course, when I started working with Maria, I said, wow, it's such an incredible blessing to work with somebody that is so close to, to perfection of the work ethics that Monica Seles was in a whole different world. Monica would practice for 3 hours and then go for another half an hour on the wall by herself, nobody with her. She would go another half an hour just to groove, just to get her rhythm at the end of 3 hours.
She had inside herself. She didn't need anybody. She was like
phenomenal. And Maria had the similar, very similar. It's just Monica had this one little extra gear.
Sven, you had one interesting thing. I saw it when I did the research today. You became the head coach of Swiss tennis at a very interesting time. I think it was August 97. And if we calculate now, there was a player called Roger Federer who was 16 years old. Did you see right away that there is a very, very special player, or how was this whole situation with Swiss tennis? And I think you even found the coaches for him, right? Yeah,
well, I mean, listen, we all got recruited by Stefan Ober. And in that time, I spoke to Stefan. I said, okay, who do we look for? He said, I have Peter Lundgren. I said, great, he's perfect. He's a great individual. He's a team player. And he said, but I have a tough time. I cannot recruit Peter Carter. For some reason, he couldn't get Peter Carter. So please go speak to Peter Carter, who was the development coach of Roger Federer when he was still living at home in Basel.
Yeah.
And so I went to see Peter, and I said, Peter, what can we do to get you to Swiss tennis? I mean, we have a phenomenal team. We would have so much fun. We have a good group of guys, but also a good group of girls. You will be responsible for that segment where Roger will be in. And he committed. He committed just because he felt that, there was a good atmosphere. And so, I put him on Roger, and Roger, it was not, everybody says, when I saw him, it was a huge, rough diamond. What did you see like when he was 16 years old? I saw the artist. I saw an artist. I saw somebody was very creative. He loved the game element of tennis that we forget sometimes. Just the game, the flair, the creativity that he had in his hand and the ability to move. His movement was like so smooth. And you said, you know, wow, if he would, you know, develop into a physical, you know, specimen, and he can become a little bit more consistent, he can be good. You know, did we think that he's gonna win 20 Grand Slams and be, you know,
103 titles, 310 weeks #1?
No chance.
Severin yesterday, so like
nobody would have thought that. Nobody.
But Peter Carter did most of the basic work at that time.
The fundamentals came from Peter Carter. Peter Lundgren took him on the tour, mostly full time. That was an important transition. They asked me, the parents asked me actually to take the job.
Okay.
And Tony Gotzik always laughs, you know, and the father always says, yeah, this is the only guy who turned down the job with Roger. And I said, well, it didn't really turn it down. I felt that Peter Carter and Peter Lundgren did such a good job. They deserve to take that job. And they asked me, who do you think is best for Roger going into the tour? And I said, well, honestly, I think Peter Carter would be better for his development on a technical side. But Peter Lundgren on the tour, because he has some backbone. He was a former 25 player in the world. He worked with Marcelo Rios. He's got some results. The press will not be able to break him down. But Peter Carter, they can break Peter Carter because he was never higher than 200 something. He doesn't have tour experience, and they would kind of, the press would put too much pressure, and he would maybe not live up to the expectations. And as we saw, it took some time for Roger to really break through. And that was mainly because Peter Lundgren was able to withstand the negativity of all the press that came with, you know, the expectations.
We had a comparison because like Marat Safin, he was quicker at the top. When he won 20 years old, he won the US Open like 3 sets to love against Pete Sampras. And Roger this time, he needed 1 or 2 more years. So it was a smart approach probably to gain time with Roger.
Yeah, that was just because Roger was young. He was emotionally not as developed, and he really made a huge jump when he started dating Mirka in 2000 at the Olympics. I will never forget. But
this was at the end. This was the best that could happen to Roger.
Well, I mean, he asked all of us, "What do you think? You know, should I, you know, start dating Mirka?"
Okay.
And we said, "No, you shouldn't do that. You know, you're too young. You got too much to look forward to, and you know, stay free." And he made the right decision. And obviously, she has been a major impact and influence. And you know, you credit to the family, credit to Roger, credit to Mirka. I mean, I'm happy to see him where he's at. You know, 4 kids and phenomenal.
He seems to do good.
He seems to do good.
Sven, what I'm curious in, you have all this experience, ATP Tour, WTA Tour. What is the main difference between coaching men and women? Or wouldn't you even talk about differences because it's so individual?
So individual. I mean, I think you do need a little bit more attention to detail with the female players. They are more aware of certain elements that are going around them, you know, that they are more aware. You need to get that tunnel vision with the women a little bit more. The men, once they are competing, they're really getting into a competitive state. That's why also Maria was so strong, because she was able to just be in that really tunnel vision type of state. This is not always possible for the female players, as easy as it is for men. Although now, as I see how things evolve, even some of the men have more difficulty to keep that focus. Maybe because of social media, maybe because of the world has changed, you know, that we have too many distractions besides, you know, tennis. So it is a
do you
couple of things.
See a change of mentality in the players the last 30 years?
Oh yeah.
So it's less attention. So nowadays you have maybe, if you want to improve the forehand, you need like 5 different exercises because they cannot stick to one for 2 hours.
Yeah.
This is something you would really like. Okay, that's interesting. How did the coaching in general change the last 30 years? I have to say, yes, when you're 55 years old, nobody will believe that, because like this is a secret you have to share with us, with all the traveling and stress and everything, like how to look like this being 55 years old. But we take it
almost
here. Almost, sorry. Yeah, exactly, in July. You're right. Sorry for that. 54, obviously.
That's right.
How did coaching change the last 30 years?
I think the coaching changed a lot because there's so much more available with video analysis, with statistics. We get a lot more information, so we have to take that on board. Before we were really dependent on our own instincts and more reading the game. As you heard Marat say, Marat doesn't believe in stats. You know, obviously because he goes by his feelings, and that's how it was used to be. You know, but I think the coaching is changing. We also have a lot more team members. We have physical trainers, physiotherapists, sometimes a sparring partner. So we do have more team members, mental coaches. So as a coach, it's even more important to really centralize yourself in that team and make sure that you know have the leadership on that element, because otherwise you have too many voices, too much noise on this cable. You know, it's like if you have too many distractions for a player, and this is what happens. That's why a lot of these relationships with players and coaches don't last very long nowadays. It's because there are more distractions. And so as a coach, you really are you need to be very clear in your message, very clear. And so not only to the player, but also to all the other people around.
Sven, one last thing, because it's interesting for me personally, for our fans here. If you prepare a match, and I know you don't care if it's a first round in Canberra with Taro Daniel now this year, or if it's a Grand Slam